We did?
Yes. And
I need time to actually read
Read
this. Can we
this.
have just a couple minutes to read this? Do we ever do that? A reading?
They're gonna
this is
walk-
from the National Council on Compensation Insurance.
Cameron
So
said that to
that
us.
is a trade organization, I assume. Not one
He
I'm
said that we are
familiar
live,
with.
just so you know.
Okay, we'll deal with it when we get to it. Okay, so right now, Keisha, let's finish our confirmations. You kindly were able to talk to Alex Farrell. That was very speedy. And I take it you have a report.
Yes,
On Alex.
as I don't want to mess up his title. He's the Deputy Commissioner of Housing and Community Development. Is that right? Or is he deputy of something bigger than that?
I don't know, but we're asking him about his being appointed to the Vermont State Housing Authority.
Right. So yes, he is. I just want to confirm he is
He has other
Deputy Commissioner
capacity. You're right.
of Housing
Right.
and Community Development. I didn't want to get that wrong. So, likely this is a situation where he's a liaison from DHCD to the Vermont State Housing Authority, and he absolutely wants to continue serving. I imagine his service began with his appointment to this role, which was within the last 2 years. But I do think it's probably important to the state and the governor that they have this liaison role.
Great. He was appointed, I think the date here is March of this year.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
So he's a new appointee.
he's a new appointee.
Right.
Yes, he was appointed in, he is appointed as of this March in a term from March to, it's interesting, they're 5-year terms, these as a commissioner of the Vermont State Housing Authority. So you're recommending that he be approved. Has he had a lot of housing experience?
I mean, I think he is now serving in a leadership role for the administration, and gaining the experience as quickly as he can.
This is great. So
I will say that.
So, and in his position at DHCD, he is being viewed as the liaison to the Vermont State Housing Authority. That's terrific and essential.
Yeah.
So I would entertain, so the motion's been made to confirm Alex Farrell to the Vermont State Housing Authority. All those in favor? Aye.
Hi.
All those opposed? Great. We are recommending to the Senate to confirm Alex Farrell. Thank you very much. Thank you, Keisha. That was speedy work. Woohoo. Great. I will take that up, and I have to do O'Brien's because she did with Keisha, but Keisha was in person. Oh, did Keisha say it was okay? Okay, so we'll do this one slightly differently, and I will take care of it. Okay, great.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Whoever needs to do it in person. Apologies. I can't.
Yeah, I'll just take care of it. Thanks. Okay, super. Gentlemen, we're missing.
Damien will be right back.
Okay.
He's talking to the editors. I can go grab him.
If you, Dirk, would be kind enough to tell them we're ready to start, can we just, okay, is there anything else we can do in the interim? I think we're in good shape. I think I could take that.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, so sorry, I apologize. We have, just on confirmations, we have people who've been appointed to the Vermont Economic Progress Council and the Board of Liquor and Lottery, just as we are discussing the liquor and lottery bill. So I've got John Russell from Rutland, Thad Richardson from Lindenville, from Caledonia County, Abby Sherman from Randolph, from Orange County, and Meg Ciccio from Washington County, and Thomas Lozon from Washington County.
Abby Sherman, who's head of budget,
Should correct,
is
Pepsi,
being put on.
the Vermont Economic Progress Council as the executive director in her capacity. It's sort of like Alex Farrell. in their professional capacities.
If it's in their professional capacities, that should be an ex officio seat, and we shouldn't need to confirm that.
I guess that's a question for the governor's office, but we're being asked to
Okay, well,
confirm.
if she's not a commissioner,
She's not.
all right.
I don't think the language on her thing is it's as executive director. As the executive director, she's being appointed.
I can do both of somebody of Washington County.
Great.
because I
If
know
you'd be kind enough to
both.
take them on, that would be great.
And I think I'm meeting with Abby Sherman at lunch.
Would you like to ask her if she'd like to do that? That would be, or do you,
Sure,
yes, thank you. That would be very helpful. So I'm going to give you,
I just need, we
yes.
have Tom Lozon.
Okay, we'll get
I
you.
mean, I think Keisha is Tom.
Keisha, would you like to
Right.
talk to Tom Lozon about, serving on the Board of Liquor and Lottery?
Sure, I will, I can maybe get an answer by noon as well. I'll do my best.
Sure, it is not an immediate rush, but I will put you down as Tom's person, and we have a Caledonia and a Rutland County. We have John Russell and Thad Richardson. And when do you want to take on one of those? And Randy, you
Sure,
want to take
I
on
don't
the
know
other?
either one, but that's fine. But also, aren't we having somebody from that board come in and talk to us?
Not right now.
I thought we were scheduling that. Someone from the board to follow up on the changes that were recommended by the agency. Or,
We're talking about I think we as a committee should interview Abby Sherman because that's an executive director position.
It's
It's
it-
as close to a
is it
commissioner as you
for
get.
her. That's a good question. She's not a commissioner. She's an executive director. Let's ask John Bloomer at one.
Well, I don't know that it's have to, it's that
Should, as opposed to have to.
we should, as a committee, have the executive director of our basic economics business support committee in here. I'm assuming we would do the same thing. I'd do the same thing with Vita if it showed up. at
Right,
that
if Cassie came in. I'm going to double check with John, but I think it's a great idea to do anyway. Thank you for that suggestion. If you would talk to her, we'll schedule her for next week for a discussion. For Scott, if we could do schedule Abby for the end of next
I
week
mean, I
after.
have no idea what her credentials are
If
to
you'd ask-
be the director. Well,
Right.
I think the committee should.
I do, but if you'd give her a heads up
I mean,
and ask her for her file, that
there
would be great.
is a study coming back
Right.
somewhere, I think on the Barry Tip bill.
Yes, for a study of Betsy.
Of Betsy, and I think one of the issues is the leadership they've had.
Yes, I think that's right. However, it still exists and people have been appointed to that council, John Russell and Thad Richardson. And would either of you want to
Okay.
take them on?
I'll take one.
Okay, which one would you like to take? The
Whichever,
Rutland or the Caledonia?
Rutland.
Okay, so Wendy and Randy, would you take on the Caledonia? Thad Richardson, we need Thad, Thad Richardson.
So you can let us.
And we will get, he lives in Lindenville, and we'll get phone numbers. Scott, if you'd be kind enough to do phone numbers for everybody,
Yeah,
that would
maybe.
be great.
He's appointed to
The Vermont Economic Program to Betsy.
Betsy.
Here you go. Thank you, and I'll hold on to that sheet. And Abby, we will interview. And here's that, and we'll schedule that. Okay. Let's shift gears to labor, and Damien is back with us, and we have Jamie and David and Dirk and Cam. We're in good shape, man. We could do a lot of damage with the labor brains that are with us right now.
We
Pretty good.
also have this,
Right, and we'll understand what that means to us right in a few minutes. So, gentlemen, you were tasked with coming up with something to help us move forward on, I believe it's section 8 of H217. So we're going back to labor, to workers' comp, to UI. And Damien, do you want to, who would like to present the agreement that people have come to on? Damien, you want to do it?
Sure, I can summarize it.
Great. Why don't you
So,
summarize it? And you can summarize what we had issued concerns with insurance and penalties and time frame of notice and things. So Damien, would you be kind enough to, and the
Yeah.
5% penalty?
Yep, so the changes, yep, you're in yellow, so you'll
Do
see
you
the
have,
changes.
do we have copies of that, or is that on our?
It
Should be on your desk.
It was on your desk.
It's draft 2.1.
Okay, hold on, let me find it. I know it's here, it's this. And I'm sure it's here. Here, is this it? Draft 2.1, thank you. That's 2.7. Oh, God, doesn't remember. Okay, great. Sorry, I'm now up to speed. Great, Damien.
Okay, so the changes start on page 10. Just-
So
Yeah.
section
actually-
7 or 8? I think it's
So
section.
they
8.
actually start at the end of section 6, I'm sorry, on page 9. So what you'll notice here is the absence of subsection C. So subsection C was struck from,
Okay, yeah.
so it's
Just-
on page,
I'm gonna orient myself in
Yep.
both bills so that we.
okay,
So we're starting in section 6 or 7?
starting in section 6.
Okay.
So I apologize for the confusion there.
What, in the old bill, it was on page 9, C1A, are we talking about?
Yep,
Yep,
all of subsection C has been struck out. So what that covered previously was that would provide that it provided timelines for mailing or depositing payments into claimants' accounts. And if you'll remember, there was it was 7 days if the injured employee continued to work for their employer doing light duty, and 3 days after receipt of wage information if they were working for a different employer. There was discussion about unifying the timelines, and ultimately the parties decided that the status quo is okay.
okay.
And so we just struck that language out entirely. I hope I paraphrased that correctly.
So there's no change.
So there would be no change to the existing law.
So we still have the 2 different timeframes, and people are just gonna
Nope.
deal.
There is no time frame.
Oh,
The bill would have
I missed-
established 2
okay.
different timeframes. There's no specific time frame. We're going to continue with existing practice.
okay.
Great.
So
That was the one with not the first time we had not more than 3 days,
Yeah.
and 7 days, and they decided to simplify it and go, just keep status quo.
Yep, so the next change in draft 2.1, you'll see on page 11, it's in section 8. We've taken originally on line 12, the penalty was going to be for a payment that was 21 days late, was proposed to be increased to 25%. That proposed increase has been eliminated, and it's reverted back to just the existing 10% penalty for payments that are 3 weeks overdue. So this is on page 11, line 12 of draft 2.1.
No, I'm just trying to find.
And
myself
why?
in the
Do we
old
wait to hear from them on the whys?
I can let them testify to that. So,
bill. Okay,
Okay,
so it's back to 10.
back to 10. And then the next change which you'll find on the very bottom of page 12, is along the same lines. The escalating schedule of penalties has been struck out in subdivision 2 at the bottom of the page. And it's just back to the existing late fee of $10 or 5% of the benefit amount for each weekly payment that's made after the established day for the payment. So if you,
Is this current law?
it is current law.
So we're just reverting to current law.
That's right.
Well, and we're gonna wanna know why.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna hear.
Right. And I can't answer that for you.
I
I'll
understand,
I'll
I'm just
defer to them.
noting it.
So, and those are the changes in this draft. There is additional language which the NCCI report pointed out a problem with the drafting on the temporary partial disability benefit. So I have drafted new language on that.
Okay, so let me just, that was the report that we just got. No, actually, it was delivered in February. Did the House not deal with this?
I think that the introduction date was, it's referring to the February introduction date for S101.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
This is like the first time they introduced this.
But
Yeah.
this is the first we've seen this.
Yes.
Yes,
I
as
think
Today
it's
is
the
the
first
first
legislature.
we've
has-
seen this.
far as I know, this was issued this week.
Okay, right.
So,
got it.
but it, yeah,
And can you tell us who this organization is? This is the trade organization for.
yeah, it's the National Council of Compensation Insurers. They are a national body that does insurance rating and actuarial projections for insurance marketplaces, and Vermont's a member of NCCI.
Okay.
So they assist our Department of Financial Regulation with rate setting, and they provide projections for impacts of different changes. So for example, as you guys will see next week when S73 comes back, that's the workers' comp for firefighters. There's a study in there. While NCCI isn't specifically mentioned,
They're the people.
they'll be providing some assistance to the Department of Labor and Financial Regulation in doing some of the analysis of potential changes to the law.
Okay.
So-
Right,
Now it's ringing a bell. It's
So-
been a number of years.
Right.
For a while, we seem to work with them a lot.
so.
My other committee, we do insurance.
So tell us what the challenge was that they raised and how you've addressed it.
So there were two challenges that they raised. One, so if you'll remember, what we did is we added language that would have provided that that would have essentially addressed a disincentive for low wage workers who are on workers' comp to return to work, because the way the formula worked out, by returning to work, they'd actually receive less money than they would have if they just received
Stayed
total
on workers' comp,
disability
right.
and stayed home.
We
So,
do not want to do that.
right, so what we did originally is we said there were two issues. What we said is it's the difference between what you would receive and the wages you're getting. So you get that in benefits now. So you basically subtract your wages from what you would have otherwise received. However, I worded that backwards.
Wow,
Backwards.
totally understand what you mean though.
Oh, I need more coffee this morning. I worded that backwards. So what, and to me, it made sense. You say the difference between this and this, and you get a positive whole number. However, for NCCI and for some of the insurers, presumably, when you say the difference between what you're making and the difference between and what you would have received, they were saying, well, we subtract what you would have received as a benefit from what you're making, and you're getting negative numbers. So there were two issues. One was the wording, which was resulting in a negative benefit. And the other was that when you go to the higher end of the wage spectrum, by switching it to the difference between what you would have received and what you're making at work, we were actually now disincentivizing higher wage earners in some instances
From returning to work.
from returning to work because they would receive more under the existing formula.
That seems like a puzzle.
So it was a little bit of a puzzle, but I've worked together with the various advocates, and I'm putting the language up on the screen.
This is not, I take it.
This is not in the draft. This is hot off the press.
Or, yes, we need a new.
Can I ask you a question before we go? So
Yes.
are you saying that disincentive exists in the current language?
So,
Yes.
Well,
so in the current law, there's a disincentive for low wage workers to return to work because you'll receive less aggregate money between your partial employment earnings and your partial disability check
and how long has it been that way?
for decades. For as long as that formula has been in place, and I'm not sure when that was last updated.
Okay,
But so, and so this is something that was identified. So you have individuals who are earning basically the minimum weekly benefit or below. So you're not allowed to receive more workers' comp than you earn in wages. So if your weekly wage is below the minimum weekly benefit, and that's about $500 a week, you're what's called a 90%er, where you get capped at 90% of your weekly wage. So dependent benefits and other things won't have you earning more money to be on workers' comp than you would have if you were working. So again, we're trying to eliminate incentives for people to go on to workers' comp or stay on workers' comp. So what was happening there is if you return to part-time work or to lower paying work, when you were in that category, you were actually receiving less money. So
if you were at the 90%.
if you were at the minimum benefit, or if you were what we call a 90%er, someone who's receiving a max of 90% wage replacement because you wouldn't even receive the minimum weekly benefit under the 2/3 formula.
So those must be the lowest wage earners.
Those are lowest wage earners, which also, if you think about it, these are the folks where the difference of $30 or $40 is
Makes
going
a
to make
big
the most difference because it's a larger portion of their regular weekly earnings. So the language that we had put in to eliminate that issue, which would basically hold them harmless for returning to work. The problem with it is that when you shift over to the higher earning workers, because the way the formula works, those workers were now receiving a disincentive to return to work. So what
Or they would have.
they would have under the proposed language. So we've reworked the proposed language. And as you can see, it's on the screen here. So the weekly, sorry about that. The weekly compensation is for, now we're saying for employees who would be eligible to receive not more than the minimum weekly benefit pursuant to section 642 of this chapter. The difference between the amount the injured employee would be eligible to receive pursuant to 642, including any applicable cost of living adjustment or dependency benefits that would be due, and the wage the injured employee earns during the period of disability. So this is basically saying, we're going to take the difference between your weekly benefit if you're totally disabled and any wages that you're earning during the period of disability. So let's say you would have otherwise been earning $400. You're receiving $100 in wages. That means your weekly benefit will now be $300. Previously, you would have been under the other formula, which we now say for all other employees, 2/3 of the difference between the average weekly wage before the injury and the amount that the employee earns during the period of disability. So, and this is where we ran into problems, because if you had an employee who was earning $1,500 prior to the injury, and then they're able to earn $600 during the period of disability, So their weekly benefit would have been $1,000. Under the other formula, although this seems to work out in my head, but I'm sure there's an issue here. Hold on a sec.
We actually could use scenarios, like
Yeah.
examples written down with the math, rather than just
Back to
this
Dick and
kind
Jane.
of,
Okay. So there are
I mean,
scenarios in the
I-
NCCI report,
okay,
and we can certainly.
So we can
work on
illustrate this
doing-
somehow in a
Doing the
chart or something.
illustrative scenarios.
We can create, but I think I understand. I mean, by this way would ensure that no one, if you're no matter what you're earning here, and you're, or whatever you're earning while you're disabled, out on disability, right? If that's what you're talking about, that you would only be compensated by workers' comp for the difference between those two, which would make you whole, but not have you earning more than what you would be earning if you worked for the on your job.
except you don't
So-
get to whole, you just get to 90%.
Right, so let me
I thought you
just go
said
ahead
you
and
use the word whole.
show you the, if you give a moment for everyone else to testify, I'll
Sure.
put the math on the paper.
That would be
and
great.
you
We
can
would
all look
appreciate
at it.
that. We have time. That would be
All
great.
right, let me move out of the witness chair and let some other folks speak,
Okay,
and I'll do the math.
okay, that would be terrific. Who would like to speak first?
Good morning.
Good
Cameron
morning.
Wood. Good morning. Policy and Legislative Affairs Director for the Department of Labor. So subsequent to our testifying on this bill last, I believe it was 2 weeks ago here in committee, we circled up. You asked for the parties to come together and try to come to a compromise. We circled up with the parties, and I just want to express appreciation for them and their cooperation with us as we tried to work through this. We also have reached out to NCCI to answer the question. Senator Clarkson, we received this yesterday from NCCI, and so we forwarded that along to the parties and Damien and sent it to you first thing this morning. For the Department of Labor, we are comfortable with what the parties have agreed to, removing certain sections of the bill. The NCCI report raised significant concerns on the drafting of the partial that Damien was just walking through. We believe that based on the redrafting we were able to work through with Damien and with the parties this morning, that we will be comfortable with what has been proposed as a redraft of that provision. We're supportive of trying to get individuals who are on workers' comp back to work, even if that is part-time. So if there are disincentives for those individuals, we want to remove them so we can allow individuals the opportunity to go back to work and not disincentivize that. Where the administration is though we're not in support of the dependent benefit increase or the dependent benefit being added to the temporary partial. I will leave it to the other parties to talk about whether or not they support that provision. I think they've been able to come to some agreement, but I don't want to speak for them if things have changed since the NCCI report. But the administration isn't going to support additional provisions that are going to potentially impact workers' comp rates to employers. You have the NCCI report, and there on the first page, it demonstrates that there's an anticipated increase of $300,000 based on the dependent benefit. That represents a 0.2% increase. And there's no for sure indication that adding that will not result in increased premiums to employers. And so our concern at this point, cumulatively, the impacts that are happening to employers across the state, we're not going to be able to support something that may result in increased workers' comp premiums or increased pressure on employers to employ Vermonters. So the department is supportive of everything else in the bill as it stands right now this morning, except the dependent benefit piece. And we would ask that you remove that at this point in time, but I will leave it to the other parties to talk about their positions.
Great, thank you. Now, I don't know who speaks for, maybe Jamie I don't know who speaks for NCCI and whether nobody, okay. So, got it. So I guess one of my questions is, who would run the language that we're landing on as a solution to this? Who would run this by NCCI so that we don't continue to have a problem?
We could run the language that we were discussing with Damien this morning. We could run it by them to see if that alleviates, I'm looking at Dirk here, to see if that alleviates the concerns that they raised in their report. We feel that it would. I will let you know that there's no guarantee that they will be back to us within, I think, a given time frame. So I
Okay,
don't
so
know
we
how-
may just have to act in hopes that it will solve the problem. Is there anyone at DFR that could look at it? No.
I think they would prefer to NCCI.
Okay, great. So it sounds like we're on our own. If Dirk, if you'd run it by them and ask them if we have some urgency on this, we need to either, I'd love to be able to vote it out tomorrow if we could. If we can't, well, we may just have to vote it out in the hopes that this works. And if it works for all of us, then, and we understand it and it works for us, then we may just have to act. There we are. Well, thank you. Anything else? Yeah, Wendy.
Just questions or?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you said 0.2% is that's what I see.
That's a projected possibility.
Correct, yeah. So that's, I don't know how to phrase this, except to just ask, is the department supportive of people getting their payments on time?
Yes.
Okay, last time we talked, I still have concerns about the data that the department has and could have. What data does the department have on late payments?
Dirk, can correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't have any data. Then that's our concern with the increase of the penalties that we raised is
Why
it's
do we
based
not
on,
have data?
because it's not required to be reported to us. When insurance carriers are making payments and the dates that they make payments, that's not information that we gather or manage.
What do you receive from the insurance companies?
My name is Mark Anderson, Director of Workers' Compensation.
Yeah, you could say they're just the,
Sure. So to answer your question, Senator, if a work, there's no mandatory reporting by the insurance industry to the department as to when they make payments. And I believe you heard from Kelly Massica when she was here last. These issues, sometimes workers get their benefits late and they just don't say anything, just like, I got it late, that's too bad. I wish I had, but we never find out about that unless they are represented by an attorney. And the attorney reaches out to the adjuster and says, my client's not getting their money. And if the adjuster is not responsive, the attorney may reach out to the department and then we become aware of it and then we can act. We can reach out to the carrier, we can issue penalties. But at any given time, there are thousands of hundreds, sometimes thousands of Vermonters receiving weekly benefit checks or not, or receiving them late or not on the day they're supposed to receive them. And there's currently no mechanism for us quantifying that. That is, I believe, something we will be able to track in our new electronic database, which we hope will go live this fall.
So what information do you receive from insurance companies now?
As to late payments.
As to any sort, just, I'm new. What do
Certain-
you receive?
Certain benefits need to be approved by the departments. And those are things, certain insurance companies need department approval to do certain things. They need the department's approval to discontinue benefits. They need the department's approval to settle a claim. either partially or in its entirety. They need the department's approval to issue a permanency benefit. But once a claim has been accepted, once an average weekly wage has been accepted because I'll back up a little bit. When you file a claim.
Yes,
and-
that'd be great.
and
If
you're
you don't
looking-
mind, if the
Yeah.
rest of the committee doesn't mind.
Okay, so
This is helpful.
the injured worker, or more properly, the injured worker's employee, when
Employer.
when there's a workplace injury, they submit a first report.
Can we just move that
Yeah,
way a tiny bit so that the
yeah, why don't we
camera
swap
can
out?
see, or you can swap, that would be great, because the camera's not picking up dirt.
Right, and there's a defined
Yeah.
benefit.
So there's a
Time
first
limit.
report of injury
Right.
submitted to the department and the insurance carrier.
So the department does get a copy of that.
The first
And who
report,
reports that?
the employer's supposed to. That's a Form 1. If the employer does not, there's a penalty for that. That's a whole nother thing. The injured worker can submit their own first report of injury. That goes to the insurance carrier. The first thing the insurance carrier does is reaches back out to the injured worker, gets a release so that they can obtain the injured worker's medical records, if that's an ER visit or whatever, a doctor's note. And then they either accept or deny the claim. If they accept the claim and the injured worker is out of work, the next thing they have to do is start paying indemnity benefits or temporary benefits, which are wage replacement benefits. And the wage replacement benefit is based on your average weekly wage. So there is a form for calculating that. That is submitted by the insurance carrier to the department, a specialist. We have spec 1s and spec 2. Specialist 1 would review that form and review the math to make sure the average weekly wage is correct. And if that form is approved, then weekly claims start being paid. And once that happens, once we approve that average weekly wage, there is no reporting to us as to if a check's going out.
Okay, so then you get the initial or the report of injury, and then you get the form documenting the amount of compensation.
Wage replacement.
And they have to approve certain benefits.
Yes, we have to.
That second form has to be approved by you.
In theory, some carriers just start paying the indemnity benefit. And if they do that, we don't even know they're doing it unless and until they seek to discontinue that benefit, or the injured worker or their attorney reaches out to the department because they feel that either the average weekly wage is calculated improperly or the benefit is not being paid as it should be. So week to week, injured workers receive indemnity benefits in the form of a check or a direct deposit from their employer's carrier, and we have no record of that. Unless and until it is brought to our attention.
But you're the keepers of the fund. So.
There is no fund. That's unemployment insurance.
Oh, right. Totally.
This is a private insurance.
Right, this is private insurance paying workers' comp
A
directly.
relationship between an
So-
employer and an insurance.
So you're not even notified of the length of the time that the insurance company has agreed to pay the benefits?
We are not, we are notified when the carrier seeks to discontinue those benefits.
Right.
Because once they start paying, they can't stop paying until we let them. So that is, carriers will discontinue temporary benefits for various reasons. Usually because the injured worker gets better and goes back to work.
So then the employer is responsible for letting the carrier know they're back at work and payments should cease.
Correct. If there's an affirmative obligation for all injured workers to report any wages earned. So if an injured worker goes back to work, they're supposed to notify the carrier, or their employer does, and the carrier files a discontinuance, which the department has to approve.
Okay,
Because if you go to work for a new employer, that employer does not know if you're on workers' comp insurance. So,
Does that
Right.
answer your question?
Mostly, so once the department approves the amount, then the department is responsible for making sure, or the way I'm seeing it, because the department must approve the discontinuation of the benefits, there's, the department is responsible for the benefits getting to the employees, is the way I'm
I know.
I know you're shaking your head, but if the department must approve the discontinuation, there's at least an implication that the department is monitoring or in charge of those benefits. You're
We are-
responsible. They can't.
They're not.
Well, no, I'm,
Yeah.
they obviously aren't monitoring them, but the way the law is written, the employer can't stop those benefits without the department's okay, is what I'm hearing, right?
That is correct.
Okay,
So
so
if a
that's
benefit,
pretty fundamental.
however, if the obligation to pay until we tell them they could stop paying is legally with the employer, and that's where the sanctions
Right,
we have talked about in the
Right.
past come in. But there is currently no mechanism for us becoming aware of that unless it is brought to us by an injured worker.
right. So the enforcement, in my opinion, could be better,
Yes.
but your department is the enforcer of that obligation.
We are.
Okay. So
Yes, good. So I think then the question is, how can we strengthen this so that you can enforce with information, so that you have more information, so that you can enforce more, both accurately and more robustly?
That is a feature that will be built into our modern electronic reporting system, which will be able to, we believe, will have the capacity to track payments of weekly benefits. And there'll be some component in that system that, sets up a red flag or notifies us if benefit payments cease or are not being made timely without prior authorization from the department. So we should have that capacity in the future.
So
that's great. Well,
That-
just when you say should, I would be happy to do what I can to make sure you have that.
I will consult with our vendors who are currently building that system to make sure that that is a component of the new system
Thank
and report back to you.
because what I think I hear Wendy saying that if we can't be ensured of that we would entertain perhaps next year in our sort of annual DOL work, improve the statute so that you address it in statute so that you would have more tools to enforce that more robustly.
That's
If we,
not as good as having it in the system now.
no, and what he is saying, what I think I hear you saying is that it is planned to be in the system with the new IT fix so that I think I hear you saying that if we do anything, that we should wait and see how the system actually handles this. And if it can't, then we should address it.
Yes.
Okay,
that
that's not
what-
what I'm saying.
Okay,
It can.
So,
I mean,
Pam,
any
do-
system
do-
can.
do you want to,
Well, I was just gonna say real quick, I mean, I don't think the department is gonna have any concern if other individuals might, carriers might, I don't think we're gonna have any concern if you wanted to put in statute that, the employers or the carriers have to inform the department when weekly payments are made. As Dirk said, pointing out, we don't have a mechanism to track this right now. So if in our new system we can, and if you're saying, I want to have an
Yes.
affirmative obligation for you to do so, I don't think we're going to have a concern with that. There maybe some have that for you, but I don't think we're concerned about getting that information. We'd like that information. It would then allow us to do more proactive monitoring. So if we have a bad actor that's consistently paying late, we are then aware of it. Right now, it's just because the way the system is designed historically, how our technology platform works, we're not made aware of an issue unless it is brought to our attention. And then we don't have a mechanism to track that over time. And so if you want an affirmative obligation for carriers to provide that information to the department so we can do better monitoring, I don't think the department is gonna have a concern with that unless the insurance carriers come in and say that's a burden, it's gonna create X cost to the system. I don't know if that's the case, but that may change our analysis. I mean, we obviously, the Department of the Administration doesn't want costs being passed on to employers at this point. I'm hoping that would answer your concerns.
That would address my concerns, I think. It's essentially, it's not fair to put the burden on the employees who are, injured, out of work, working on getting to the doctor, trying to pay their bills. For them, it's a much bigger burden for them than it is for the insurance company to just shoot over a file. Everything's electronic now. It's not.
Well, it's not yet.
But my understanding is,
For you all, but they'll generally.
but Wendy, my understanding is it's the employer, not the employed, that have this obligation to be, it's the employer,
Well,
not,
the insurance company is acting on behalf of the employer.
Yes, in
Here's
the
mine.
workers' comp law, the term employer and insurance carrier are essentially interchangeable. So that, yes, the legal burden is on the insurance carrier to pay that benefit and to pay it timely unless we authorize its discontinuance. But there is no current mechanism for us tracking that on a weekly basis, and we hope to have that in the new system. And I will confirm or deny that is a component of the new system, and if it is not, I will see if we can build that into it. The system is
Thank you.
currently in development.
that's great.
And that
If you'd be kind of to let us know, and Damien I don't know, Damien, are you listening to this part of the conversation? Are you still working on your formula?
He's doing that.
I am doing that.
Okay. So if you could I think we'd like to have, depending on what your answer is, language incorporated into this that would ensure that. If you don't, because you're, I think, gonna go and check and see if it's gonna be a component of what's being built in.
Right, well, since we're taking out the language
Yeah.
of penalties,
Yeah.
I think we need to find some other way to assure that people
Absolutely.
will be paid on time.
Well, to be clear, we're not taking out the penalty
Right.
language, we're just not enhancing it
Okay.
in the current draft.
Okay.
Still,
So the last thing that's left that is an enhancement is the dependent benefit, which we're gonna hear now. So I think you're gonna check. We are gonna add language if the answer is no, is my understanding. And if you'd be kind enough to work on the language that we would want to have to enable you to be a better enforcer of this, that would be great.
Yes, and when you're talking about IT systems, it's never really no, it's how much. So please just
Well,
provide that sort of answer.
that would be great. And we could maybe get that answer tomorrow. I mean, our time frame here is super tight. Or later today.
I can try and get it today.
Okay, great. That would be helpful.
And the last thing I'll say, if there are no other questions, is I apologize for dumping this NCCI stuff on you at the last minute. But my NCCI contact was out of the office. He returned yesterday. I talked to him. He said that he would provide me with this language. He did, and as soon as I got it, I circulated.
Great. And it looks like Damien is fixing it, which is great. And if you'd be kind of to run by Damien's, that's the other piece you're going to kindly do for us. And if we could get an answer today or tomorrow, that would be great.
Did the NCCI folks look at, like, this problem has been occurring for years? Has anyone quantified that? Or, I mean,
What problem?
the problem that we're trying to solve with
The
the
disincentive
unintended.
to return to work.
Right,
Yes, it sounds like this disincentive to return to work has existed for a long
for
time.
years.
Arguably it has. NCCI they're not an advocacy organization. So they will tell you what their actuaries think will happen if you do something. They won't opine as to whether that is good or bad. So it would be unlikely for them to issue a report that says something like Vermont's temporary partial disability benefit is a disincentive to return to work.
That makes absolute, I find that hard to believe that there is no incentive if they are paying out more money and creating a larger amount of money that the people who are paying into it are having to pay out as a result of this. That makes no sense. You'd think they would want to be more on top of it. Anyway, we're fixing it now, which is good. But it's sort of sad that we're only getting to it at this point.
I agree.
I
apologize.
No, it's not it's NCCI. I think it's straight on.
No, NCCI doesn't just come in. You have to
To ask them
call
to go in.
and ask them to review it. And I know we've done that probably when we're playing around with pharmacy benefits and stuff.
Right.
That we've done that before. So, yeah, they just don't come in and
So they don't
analyze.
routinely
No.
monitor and audit.
And
systems.
the workers, if they're in fact being paid more than we probably thought they should be, are not gonna complain. And the insurance, so it falls on the insurance companies and they haven't complained.
Well, they maybe haven't paid enough attention. So, which is a
Maybe
little
it's-
discouraging. Just saying. I mean, you don't think it's their issue.
I don't think it's constructive to cast blame.
Okay.
I think that we set the system up. The insurance companies set their premiums according to the system we set up. If it's a disincentive or not, if you're in this wage level and you're receiving $10 or $15 a week more than you would if you went to work, I don't know. Those are also judgment calls.
I'm glad we're fixing it now.
Yes.
I think that's great. I think we need to hear from David and Jamie, because our time is
Thank you.
great. Thank you very much.
Good morning, David Mickenberg here on behalf of Vermont Association for Justice and Working Vermont. We worked, all of us together to try to get to a place where we can hopefully have a bill that has as close to consensus as possible. And we heard from the department that, at least from their perspective, that we're close with that one exception of the dependent benefit. And I just want to put that in context a little bit. Actually, this NCCI rating is helpful just in terms of scope. We're talking about $300,000 for written premium of 166 million a year, 0.2% potential impact. And if you put it in a historical context, we're talking about a benefit which this body approved of in 1959, made regular increases to until 1981, and then hasn't increased the benefit since then. So if you were assuming some adjustment for inflation, there's probably lots more savings that has occurred over those 42 years to employers for not having any increase here. So to a certain extent, it feels like that was a policy decision that was made, and it's appropriate at this point to go from $10 to $20 and to apply this to those earners that are receiving temporary partial disability. And when we talk about comp benefits, we want to put it in the context of people getting wage replacement. Well, they're getting 2/3 of their wages. For most of those people, I don't believe most people getting comp benefits would be taxed at the 33 1/3% bracket. If there is one, I don't know for those on finance whether there is a 33 1/3 bracket, but I would understand. My sense is that most people aren't taxed at that bracket. So even though it's taxed, it's not taxable. You're getting 2/3 of your wages. And so you're already receiving less than you would otherwise get. And if you have children, there's tax benefits for having children. You're not getting the benefit of those tax benefits. So I think from our perspective, this is a reasonable update to something that hasn't been updated in 42 years in terms of the dependent benefit. And it's important to the folks that we work with that they are able to access that. That was a piece that we focused on. And just in terms of your question, Senator, why are the other pieces? Well, that are out in terms of the penalties and the days, the 3 and the 7 days. Well, that was a part of the compromise that we came to, at least with the insurance industry and speaking with others. So felt like, yes, trade-offs, We do think that the penalty piece, given what the conversations we had with the insurance industry and the department, I like the idea of having more information, and perhaps we can come back to that at some point in the future to look at that with more data. I do think that's important. So
Thank you for that, because I think we will get more data if what we find out about the DOL's new IT system can actually track it. We will have more data, and we'll have, in addition to Kelly's work with her clients who have been harmed by late payments, which we will have data from the Department of Labor as to how many of these and how big a problem it is, and what do we do about it? Did you want to?
No, I would just expect if it is being tracked, that the payers will pay more attention to the deadlines, and we would have less late payments. I mean, the goal is to have less late payments.
And I think we heard from Kelly that has been improved a bit by direct deposit, and that has helped. But
It's
that
easy to track.
it's easier
Yeah,
to
she's heard,
track.
I didn't hear that the late payments have been less, but that the knowledge is improved.
I thought we heard a
Can't
combination.
blame the mailman.
Right,
Right.
right. But I didn't hear that the problem with late payments.
I
has
think it
been
has
reduced. It's just been more.
It's easier to
able
track.
be tracked.
just a few other points in terms of just on the cost of the dependent benefit. I just want to put in context a little bit. This year in 2023, employers are paying $11 million less in comp premium. In 2022, it was $8 million, and that trend has been going down. They've been paying less and less over the last 6 to 7 years, which that's a good thing.
In comp benefits, right, which is why the rate has gone
No, the
down.
premium.
In premium.
No, and they
Yeah.
really appreciate it. Workers'
Yeah.
comp is,
Oh, yeah.
it can be very
Well,
expensive.
What that means is
Yeah.
fewer workers are being injured,
Which is the best thing.
which,
Or workers are going back to work more quickly, or.
while they're not as severely injured.
Or not as
Yeah.
severely injured.
Right.
There's a lot of factors, but I just, in terms of the cost of the system, those are good numbers and we want to celebrate those, but in terms of the sort of overall cost of the $300,000 for the system, it seems like a fair amount to reflect an update to something that hasn't been updated in 42 years. So,
Is
Thank
the
you.
work losing the bill over?
maybe, I mean, what is it?
Well,
Well,
let's,
if the administration is not supporting it,
we'll see what the,
yeah, I mean,
That's
I mean, that is the other factor here, is this bill without that worth doing?
I know, but
Or
that's
do
our,
we just
that's what we'll
let it
make a
go?
decision about. Like, that's our policy decision. I just want to clarify.
No, I'm just asking the
Yeah.
advocates, if.
Yeah. Well, it's something to think about. I mean, I don't know, the administration may not be supportive of it, whether the governor chooses to veto it.
Is another question.
Question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are many things that we have moved on that the administration may not approve of, but that are not vetoed.
Well, I will add too, that I believe, I don't want to speak for the administration, but I don't believe they were supportive of having the enhanced penalty section in the bill, which we agreed to take out.
Right.
Just, we're here in the spirit of compromise to try to get something.
Which one are they less excited about?
Okay, so
That's the other question.
my question just is to clarify, there were fewer workers' comp claims in 2022, or just less money was paid out?
There was 11 million in savings for premium. I can send you the press release from the governor's office that talks about that.
I think we must have got,
2022 was 8 million.
was paid
Yes.
out.
Less 11 million in savings for workers' comp premiums for employers in 2023,
Right.
8 million in 2022. I can go back down through the list. and
Heard those
get more.
quotes, I think,
No, it's-
from this
it's
committee.
And the reason we're able to keep the workers' comp rate at 1.5 is exactly that, which is, that's terrific.
So, but I do want to say I really appreciate the work that we've all done to. try
Thank
to
you
get
for
to
doing it.
something that's very, I think, a good bill that will help workers and balance the interests of the different parties. So,
Thank you for your work. We appreciate, because all of you have the expertise. And we needed you to work that out. So thank you very much.
One last piece, with the language that, that Damien's been working on, we appreciate.
The NCCI language.
Yeah, the catch on the formula, we support the change in that, and we think it's directed towards the folks we were interested in trying to help, which is the lowest wage earners that will disincentivized to go back to work under the current formula, so that's.
Great, sure.
Can I
Right.
just say one more?
Jamie,
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
Okay. Just about the assumption about disincentivized. I agree, you shouldn't be paid more to stay home than to go to work. But just as a manager, I've supervised a lot of employees who are really frustrated to be home, no matter what they're being paid, and they want to go back to work, and they feel an obligation to their work, and they're distressed because their colleagues are having to take on more work, especially people in laborers. So there's a lot more that goes into this than just what you're paid. And some of these injuries can mess people up for their lives. And so it's not just a matter of, am I working? Am I staying home because I'm paid? That still is an unpleasant, harmful situation for a lot of folks, because many people work for more than money. I mean,
Right.
there's a satisfaction
Oh, absolutely.
in work and
Absolutely.
a camaraderie with your fellow workers.
Thank you for that. That's,
I just-
That's
an
what I
important,
was reacting to,
All right.
that the disincentive.
Thank-
I'm not, I know it doesn't work
Yeah.
for all people that way.
absolutely not. Thank you for that. That is important addition and important to be reminded of. Jamie, would you be kind enough to join us?
Good morning, Jamie Fian on behalf of American Property Casualty Insurance Association. And APCIA took your request to try to, find a compromise package to heart. And in doing so, looked at the totality, of course, of S101. You focused on a couple of issues this morning, but remember there were a number of other ones as well. And so sort of reached that sort of consensus. As you've heard this morning, a couple of the legs are a little wobbly, but we'll stick with what you have in front of you. But the NCCI report is new, and the language I'd love to be able to run by my folks, but again, we're in the spirit of compromise. What we have in front of you.
So in the spirit of compromise, we have gotten rid of all the penalties and all the date changes, and you're supportive of increasing the dependent benefit.
As part of the pack.
Yes, as part of the package. Great, thank you.
You are supportive of that.
Yeah,
It's
All right, well,
Supportive,
or
yeah,
you'll take it.
not opposed.
Yeah,
you know,
all right,
it's-
all right.
it's part of the
nuanced, but
compromise
Fall on
package.
its-
Okay,
It's not a, it's a nuance.
I
in terms of
understand.
how
I
you-
didn't ask the question. Fair.
Great.
But I do, well, I won't say that. I do want to talk to the department about this. I do see potential administrative.
So
burden and
you
having to
want to chat about
notify
which the
every,
IT?
Date of payment. Again, we sort of have disagreed from the beginning on the premise that these are occurring quite a bit, which is why this gather information from our perspective is important. And the database sounds like the right way to do it, but I guess we'll just sort of set that aside.
Well, I think we're going to hear if that's been asked as they design the new system. I think that's what Dirk's going to be confirming.
It wasn't clear to me, like in the absence of that, what would your language be added to the bill that might speak to it? And that may create some issues from our perspective in terms of administrative costs to the system, et cetera. Would ask you not to do that until we can kind of, I think the department talked in the absence of their software and just sort of doing their own survey to help provide some data. So I think there are other mechanisms to get to this information rather than.
But we will find out soon
Yeah, fair
whether
enough.
it's already being asked to be included.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions for Jamie? Terrific. Damien, do we have some math?
We got some math.
Okay, great, because I just want to remind everybody, in 15 minutes, we're shifting to trying to solve the public records issue with the cannabis bill.
And I'm double scheduled right now, so if we can do this in less than.
Does that mean you
15
charge time and a half or double time?
minutes, I wish.
divided by zero, it's infinity. So
Right.
Well, happily.
Don't
it's not
remind me.
0.
Okay. So thank you for indulging the mathematical side of my brain. So what you're going to see here is there's a clear flipping point, and it actually occurs. There are people who are earning the minimum weekly benefit who will do better under the new formula, and there are people earning the minimum weekly benefit who will do better under the old formula.
interesting.
So we're gonna see that in a second, but so first, let's take someone who's earning $500 a week prior to the injury. So the minimum weekly benefit is $535 per week right now. So this is someone that we would call a 90%er. They can't earn the minimum weekly benefit, but they're also not allowed to earn more than 90% of what they earned pre-injury. So they get $450 a week in temporary total disability benefits. Under the old formula, they would get 2/3 of the difference between their pre-injury earnings and their earnings during the period of disability. So they would get $264, which is 2/3 of 400. So their total would be $364. So it's 264 plus the $100 they're earning per week.
I'm sorry, what's the able to earn $100 a week?
So I'm just assuming that they have a part-time job that they can do for $100 a week.
Okay,
It's just a round number.
So that's the able to earn $100 a week.
Right. So
from
this
a
is
different
job.
employer,
Yeah.
Right.
Any employer.
from any employer.
but
So we're
not
just-
the employer,
Yes.
from the
it could
workers'
be,
comp.
It could be. They could be
Oh,
doing like
okay.
work
Any-
for, I
any
mean,
employer.
at the current
Coming
minimum
into
wage,
an
this
office.
is like
Okay.
1 8-hour day a week.
Okay,
But so I've just picked $100 because it's a round number.
oh yeah,
For
Good.
purposes of the math. So anyway, under the old formula, they come out at 364, which is less than their total disability benefit. Under the new formula, they're held harmless for going back to work. So same thing happens.
wait, just give us a chance to,
Yep,
at least me, I just want a chance to, okay, so temporary total disability is 90%.
yep.
Okay, but you have
No,
90%
it's
of
2/3 of
600.
the $500.
Why do you have 90% of 600?
Because that was the work.
Oh,
Should be
I'm
500.
sorry. It should be 90% of 500. That was a typo.
So the math is still correct.
Math is still correct. 90% of
so that's-
500 is 450. That was just a typo.
So
Okay,
that's-
so then the 2/3 is 500 minus the 100, because you take away what they're earning.
And then, so you get 264. But if you add 264 to the $100 they're earning, they come out about $85 less per week than they'd be earning if they were taking total disability benefits. Under the new formula, they're held harmless, so they get the same amount in total by combining $350 in partial disability benefits plus the $100 they're earning at their new job.
Which is still less. It's than what they're currently earning.
It's less than their pre-injury earnings, but it's equal to what their benefit with their workers' comp benefit would be. So,
If they didn't work.
Okay,
right.
I
So
got that.
you can never get workers' comp benefits that are equal to more than 90% of what you earned before your injury. That's the statutory
Across the board, no matter what you're.
across the board, no matter what. So
If
with,
you- I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you a question. When we talk about a weekly benefit, we're talking about the weekly benefit in the job in which the employee is injured, not the total amount that he might make if he had a second job also. Is that correct?
right, we're looking at that's a good point. Do average earnings look at both?
Average weekly wage is calculated by a 26-week look back from the date of injury. That includes income from all sources.
Okay, yeah, so we are looking at just your overall earnings here and then your earnings after the fact. I know for like volunteer firefighters, your workers' comp benefit is based off your earnings from other jobs because you don't get money as a volunteer firefighter, just to bring us.
And workers' comp applies to people who work part-time as opposed to full-time as well? Is there any floor?
No, the floor is this 90% benefit. So as long as you're in a job that's covered by workers' compensation, and you get injured on the job, then you're entitled to the workers' comp benefit.
Okay, let's.
Oh, I thought you were asking, are there jobs that, like, what's the threshold for being
Is there
covered?
a threshold?
I think there is.
for unemployment?
Like-
So
If you work 10 hours a week, are you
yep,
covered?
you can still get workers'
still
comp. So if I work 10 hours a week, but I break my back
Yep.
on the job,
That makes
I'm gonna
sense.
get wage replacement and medical benefits for that.
Okay.
So
If
you're
I break my back in the first hour of my first day of work on the job, workers' comp will cover me the same way that my health insurance would cover me the day I become covered.
Mm.
Does it make sense?
And then it would be
Yeah, probably.
based
Yes.
on your projected earnings in that particular job as opposed to the earnings, because there would be no look back.
Well, you're still
Well,
working off of that average earnings. So so imagine I've been working for 26 weeks, but I just switched jobs. I'm still covered as soon as I start working and I'm covered by the new policy. The issue would come up is if, for example, I quit my job and became an independent contractor. And I didn't buy workers' comp coverage for myself because I was covered by an exclusion from the
Well, the
requirement.
reverse situation is what I'm thinking of. You're an independent contractor, you're not covered. You start a new job, it's the first day of the job, you're injured in the first hour on that job. What would you base the dollars on?
I am not sure how that's calculated off the top of my head.
who would pay?
But the, go ahead.
You be entitled to the minimum if you don't have sufficient wages. You need to have. If your average weekly wage calculation results in 0, I don't think you're entitled to indemnity. That's your entitlement. Agree with that, Dave?
I think so, although I think I would have to think about it. I think, Senator, there's actually, if you can't calculate you would look to like comparable position in that industry. I believe there's language in there.
Hold on, let me,
Comparable job.
Yeah,
Damien's just.
but I
looking
could
at-
be wrong on
I have to double
that.
check.
Yeah, that's the double check.
I mean, hopefully it doesn't happen often, but I'm just curious as to.
Yeah.
And then I'd just like to finish this math because we have 8 minutes.
yeah, I would have to do more research on that, but we can get you an answer
Yeah,
since you're not
that
voting
would be
this till
great.
tomorrow.
That'd be great. If-
So the next instance here is,
You've taken it off the screen.
oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Next instance here is you're earning $700 a week prior to injury. The key takeaway is that under the old formula, you'd come away with $500. So 2/3 of the $600 difference is $400. So you come away with $500 under the new formula because you'd be eligible for the minimum weekly benefit of $535. It's less than 90% of your average weekly wage. So you're entitled to that minimum. You would come away with $535 under the new formula. The tricky thing happens when we get close to the point where you flip from the minimum weekly benefit to 2/3. So I took it at 802, which 2/3 of 802 is the minimum weekly benefit, $535. Under the old formula, you would come out at, so 2/3 of $702.
802.
Nope,
Oh,
802
702.
minus 100. So 2/3 of that is $468. And if you add that to your weekly earnings, you get $568. So you get a little bit more money for going back to work than you would for staying out of work, which is what happens once you're earning above that minimum. You start to see a benefit, monetary benefit to going back to work. So just considering the monetary factors here and not the other intangible factors that come from returning to work. Under the new formula here though, and this is where we may want to tweak the language further. under the new formula, you actually would come out worse. You'd come out with the same benefit as before. So you would have a small group of employees who are approaching the point where they would get something more than the minimum benefit. And it's really in this, I don't know where the cutoff is, but it's somewhere in the like $750 range is my guess. You're going to see a point where you actually do better under the old formula than under the new formula. And the way we've drafted it now is if you're earning the minimum weekly benefit or less, you'd be under the new formula. So there's actually a few people who would come out worse.
Just say earning less than the minimum. Do you think that would fix this problem?
So the problem is you're earning the minimum weekly benefit from like $600. Because at $600, 90% of that is $540. So you're earning the minimum weekly benefit there. And I think at $600, because we did 700 above, and you come out better under the new formula than you do the old one. So I think it would be whichever is greater, would be the fix there for, and then you could actually write it for everyone. Because if we look at, if we go up to $1,500 a week, you're clearly much better off. You're $100 better off under the old formula
Right.
than you would be under the new formula. So you could write it for everyone, just have the formula written as the greater of either the difference between what they were entitled to and what they're earning, or 2/3 of the difference between pre-injury and post-injury earnings. And then and this is assuming this is the direction you want to go in, where nobody earns less for returning to work, then this would accomplish that. So, and there will be, it would certainly require additional benefits to be paid out versus now. But for this worker now, they're already getting $1,033. So the insurers and the employers aren't going to see their costs go up for that worker. It's really those low wage workers where you'll see the benefits go up, and otherwise it'll stay the same for the insurers.
But right. So
And
you just need to
employers,
tweak the
yeah.
language a tiny bit. So I would recommend, given where we are in time, that you'd be kind enough to tweak that language, get it as soon as you're able to all of us, and to Dirk, who can send it to NCCI, right? Dirk is gonna do that. Dirk's gonna check on the instructions that workers' comp is given to the new IT system and see what data is going to be collected. And Dirk is also maybe going to draft some language that might compensate if there is no instruction. So I think those are the things we're asking for us to
Okay,
then.
so I'm waiting for language from the department on the data collection.
Oh, yes. If
And then-
if the answer is no, there's no workers' comp payment.
What was the
It-
third
in the
thing
IT.
you said?
Help me if
so
I'm
yeah,
wrong,
I'm
there's a lot
drafting-
here.
alright.
So,
I'm updating the TPD
he's
language
updating
and
the
sending
little
it to, I can send it just to all the advocates and the department can
And
share it,
us.
and to you, and the
Right.
department can share it with NCCI.
and then Dirk is gonna then share that with NCCI to make sure it's still okay, and we may not have an answer, we may have to pass this out without an answer from NCCI. It's the best, and then we'll just have an answer hopefully as it continues to go through the
Be in
process.
conference committee.
Exactly,
Presumably.
whatever, we can keep addressing it, the point is, we're still working on it. And Dirk is gonna check, and Kim are gonna check with the IT and find out what instructions have been given to them in terms of the data collected on workers' comp payments. That's the third thing, and Dirk is going to draft language, if it's not included, if the IT data collection is not included in the new IT system. You're going to draft language about how we could enhance notification to the department about when payments are made so that you can enforce more fully. So,
Would,
is that my understanding? Thank you, Cam. Cam's nodding yes.
would it make more, I don't know.
Would make
Would it
more sense for Damien
sense
to draft it?
address- No, would it make more sense to address that through potential contract? To build
For the IT?
capability into the system.
What would that cost?
Well, that's what he would find out.
Yeah,
Okay,
We could consider
ask
that
them.
option, right?
yeah, absolutely. I think that would make more sense. I think it would be better for us to collect more data and have it done by you. So that's good. I don't,
okay.
But the data comes from the insurance company, so if they have a better idea of how to do it quicker and cheaper, and
yeah,
that's. they should-
Okay, but how many insurance companies are we talking about? And how many policies? How much data are we going to feed in, most of which will probably say the thing got sent out on time?
so how many, I guess
Are
that's
we
it.
gonna have to hire an employee to process?
Let's ask
Oh,
Jamie, how many,
That was my concern with where this was gonna go, which is why I wanted to.
so how many insurance companies now, Jamie, roughly
Well,
serve Vermont in workers'
I'll
comp?
have to get back to you on that.
Who would know that?
Some
You
have
would.
sizable market share, others not so much, but there are less policies. But the number of claims, as you heard, is significant.
Is- yeah.
So you're talking about potential, if you're talking about every single claim payment issue, I don't know how you,
It's
It is
paid
collecting.
weekly, right?
yeah.
So every week you're going to get this huge volume of data.
What's the obligation on any party to? submit
Who's
how
gonna
do it?
mine that data?
Well,
That's what the
Yeah.
system.
so let's find out before we create a mountain here. Let's see if what your request, what the system is potentially going to be able to handle. And then let's deal with that. Let's cross that bridge if we have to. Is that okay?
See you
Great.
in the morning.
I think we will, so we are dealing with, we're dealing with medical marijuana in the morning, but we could also, let's massage this and let me
Yeah.
get a sense of how quickly we could do this, because it would be
I'll put
great
the
if we could get this out.
TPD language out to everybody over the lunch hour, so as soon as I get some food, I'll draft it.
Feed them and fan them. Okay,
Yeah, otherwise it's not good.
yeah, we
Low
know
blood
that.
sugar draft.
Yes.
I,
Okay, so if we schedule
am
this,
drafting.
for either for a short bit tomorrow or for Tuesday morning, we might have a better answer. You can get that to Dirk. We might have a better answer from NCCI on Tuesday morning.
sure. Just let me know what works. Scott can work with my schedule.
Okay,
So
Right.
tomorrow I think is pretty good for me.
okay, let's see what we can do
But,
tomorrow.
Yeah.
We already have a. Okay, great. We will get back. This is great. Thank you. Thank you all for your work on this and thank you for moving this forward. This is very helpful. Okay, we are now going to shift gears. This is like policy whiplash. Policy whiplash, in comes cannabis, out goes labor. Oh, man, look, it's the.
Cannabis related requisition.
Okay, I have seen the other chair with the cushion on it up in the card room. That is where there's a really good cushion. So we can either steal that chair or we can just ask to have a cushion made for this chair that duplicates that chair.
Can I take the pamphlet?
Yeah, that would be
Christmas
great.
tree shop, $9.99, just forget it.
Okay. Tanya, welcome back. Tucker and Bryn and Michelle. Thank you for working. Thank you for, so we're switching now gears now to H270 again. We are addressing the public records piece. There are bigger structural problems that may need to be addressed. And so actually I'm going to ask Tucker to come and join us and summarize where we are with the concerns Tanya has raised, how we could deal with them short term in this bill and what we may have to deal with longer term.
Sure, good
Is
morning.
that the question to,
That is, you've set the question. You've set the ball on the tee, and I'll do my best to
Okay.
make contact. So good morning, Tucker Anderson, Legislative Counsel. So from what I understand, the committee and Tanya were already running when I came into the race, so I'm trying to catch up with you all a little bit. But Tanya raised some concerns about the language in section 901A, which governs the accessibility of some of the licensing records and disciplinary records that are held by the CCB. As background, when I first saw this language and did a little background research on it, it seemed like it was taken from and intended to directly mirror two existing statutes, right down to, the phrase shall be a public record. And that's the Office of Professional Regulation, Accessibility and Confidentiality of Licensing Disciplinary Matters. The title of that section is almost exactly the same. And then the almost exact same statute which governs the Board of Medical Practice and their records related to disciplinary matters. Tanya, the one piece that I definitely did catch from the testimony is that shall be a public record is a potentially confusing, potentially problematic way to phrase that it's available to the public.
right, and
So I agree, and it does exist elsewhere in statute. If that's something you wanted to clean up,
so just to remind everybody, we're in do we have something to look at?
you do.
We have
You have a standalone technical correction sheet that I sent in to Scott for that section. I only addressed some of the technical issues that Tanya highlighted, and then one or two other things that I flagged in here. So if you want to take a look at those, I can move through them in order.
So I just want to be able to follow.
It's this, it's in
Right, no, I
section
have
6,
this,
right?
but I
It's
wanna
in
look at-
section 6 of the bill.
Got it, thank you, that's what I was
That's
wondering.
why I thought that's where you were going, which is on page
7. Section 6 is on page 7, but I don't see this.
Section 6 is this is now changed. It was section 6 in the original bill. The amendment, it is now in,
Is it accessibility and confidentiality? Yeah, so it's page 12. At least on this version that I have, section 9.
yes.
Yes.
It's on page 12. It's
Okay.
now the new section 9. It was the second. And
Okay,
it is now 901A, so it's right here. Okay, now we're all anchored. So let's go through this.
Excellent. So I proposed essentially 3 pieces of technical correction here based on what I heard from Tanya. Tanya also had some suggestions that may have a more substantive impact, and I didn't want to tangle in any of those before you all, as the legislators had an opportunity to make calls on those policy decisions. But in subsection B, the first thing is cleanup so that this just cites the short title for Vermont's open meeting law.
Right,
And eliminated the reference specifically to section 312. There is one statute very similar to this that calls out a specific section of the open meeting law, but it's to exclude the possibility of executive sessions. Since that's not happening here, it makes sense to just
Right.
cite Vermont's open meeting law.
okay.
The second is that, and Tanya did highlight this in some of what she was pointing to, is making sure that the list of the records is inclusive of everything the CCB is going to be taking in here, and to make this parallel to the existing OPR licensing confidentiality statute, the Board of Medical Practice. The series in subdivision C2 would be records related to complaints, investigations, and I made this mistake. I had or related records in there, but we actually started the subdivision with that, so we can get rid of it and just make it complaints, investigations, or proceedings.
Great, terrific. And the third is the issue that Tanya raised in
Right. and
D1.
It's in 2 instances. It's in D1, and if you go on to page 2, it's in D2 as well. Instead of stating that the information contained in the list shall be public or shall be a public record. You can replace that with shall be available for public inspection and copying under Vermont's Public Records Act.
That seems like a good solution for that concern.
Now, some of the more structural recommendations that have come up, the question is really going to be, are you intending to establish upfront these records are exempt and shall be kept confidential? You know, you're applying a duty of confidentiality to this agency and saying that these records are not going to be released under any circumstances, and then establishing an exception that says, except for this list or registry, which shall be available for public inspection and copying. Or in the case that disciplinary action is taken, then the status of the record changes from default confidential to now available for public inspection and
So
copying.
that was my understanding of the request of the CCB, was that only upon an investigation reaching the point of action were they wanting this to be available for public scrutiny.
Okay, well then.
Is that correct, Bryn?
That's the way that this is structured currently. If that's the way that the committee intends to proceed with this, I would recommend continuing to mirror the OPR language or the Board of Medical Practice language for how they deal with professional licensure complaints, investigations, and proceedings. And as you stated, if there needs, and maybe there should be, some cleanup in the future, maybe that's a holistic thing for our public records intersection professional licensure.
Right, because what I think, what we found out in looking at this with Tanya, that Tanya raised, were issues that it would make sense to fix structurally. But for this bill, we could do these sort of immediate fixes and then look at the structural fixes with OPR in the Secretary of State's office this fall maybe, and maybe we'd have it for next year.
If that is the will and whim of the
Does that make, is that, I think where we landed?
I'm sorry, I just have a question.
Yeah, Tom, do you have a question for Tucker?
I don't know who it's for, but probably for you. If there was a disciplinary situation and there was a settlement, can the settlement include not having the records be public?
That is going to get more into potentially a procedural question about how licensing action is taken by the agency that I'm not familiar with.
Well,
if there's no final disciplinary action taken, this would set it up so that it's not going to be released.
Could we say, or I don't know if we would want to, but would,
I think we should defer to.
okay.
I would also say that I can look into the Board of Medical Practice statute because they do have separate statutory provisions that deal with when a settlement is reached with respect to a complaint against a physician.
Okay.
And I can send that to you, and if that's something you wanted to look into, we can.
Yeah, well, just my opinion is sometimes settlements can be, or a settlement not being public can be bad for the public because there could have been something that happened that the public should know about. I mean,
I think we should hear from
Yeah.
Bryn and understand the bar at which we are talking about public, not public, or open to inspection or not open to inspection. Tanya, just before we turn to Bryn on that, do you have a response to these suggestions?
Yeah, so Tanya Marshall, State Archivist, Chief Records Officer. I appreciate Tucker's technical changes. That's exactly what I was looking to address. And, you know, we do recognize there's areas of statutes that have been around for quite some time that make the reference to public records, and we see it replicated. So as I put in my email to Legislative Counsel that, you know, if we have the opportunity to not make more statutes that way, that's very helpful. So I think the technical corrections are good. And then in terms of the broader questions, I really can't comment on what you make a determination of what can be exempt or not exempt, but I do think that what Tucker has prepared at least elevates up, you know, that question about complaints. If they don't go forward with further action, that was something that wasn't really clear from the version as passed by the House. So now that's moved up. So I don't have any, I feel like what I raised at the committee has been addressed, and I appreciate Tucker's work as well as Michelle and Bryn's collaboration behind the scenes for that amendment proposal.
Thank you very much, Tanya, and thank you for your help clarifying this. I think this is an improvement. And I think then we would turn to Bryn to ask her, because I think what Tanya just said helped me a lot, that complaints are complaints, but action, but something that it goes beyond a complaint and is investigated and what's the right word for when you affirm a complaint? They're substantiated. Is that right? Looking at my word man. When a wonderful word to use. Substantiated, but not as good as the V word yesterday that I couldn't remember just.
Vergule.
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 Vergule. That's right. I am writing it down. It's like vergule. It's a great word. So that is my understanding. So Bryn, if you'd come up and just that complaints that are not substantiated don't go any further. But once a complaint is substantiated, then it's an actionable item, and then so help me and help us. I think that's what I'm understanding.
Yes. So for the record, Bryn here, Executive Director of the Cannabis Control Board, and you have it quite right.
Oh, such a relief.
That the purpose here was really to balance, and much Tucker was very helpful in describing lots of professional regulations, responsibilities, goals in their public records statutes. So the purpose here is very similar, that the board is endeavoring to protect sort of our licensees from any unnecessary reputational damage. And I'm sure you can imagine there are quite a few complaints that come in about licensees from sometimes from the public, but often from other licensees. And the board, a big part of the board's work is to investigate those complaints and find out if they are accurate, if we should substantiate them, if we should take an administrative action against a licensee. And so the idea with this language would be that that information about the complaint and the investigation would become public only once the agency has made the determination that the complaint is valid, and we have conducted our investigation, and we have undertaken a notice of violation, for example, or some sort of administrative action, disciplinary action against the licensee. And once that process is concluded, then that record would become public. And that way we are not compromising an ongoing investigation. For example, we had a contamination event that
right, which we all read about.
Was published in the news. That there was several weeks that we were investigating that allegation, and it would have been damaging for the board if all of that information was public in the middle of our investigation. So the idea is protect the ongoing investigation, protect the reputation of the licensees if the complaint is not valid, but also provide that information to the public once the complaint has been determined to be valid and we completed our investigation and we have gone through the administrative disciplinary process with the licensee. In addition, it makes that registry of complaints public, where there has not been found to be a valid complaint about a licensee. So the complaints are public without the associated names of the licensee that was complained about.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think this is good. Thank you.
So you have complaints. I'm sorry, maybe I heard wrong.
Do you want to ask how many complaints they've had so far?
Not sure I can answer that, but
yeah, but they have had complaints.
Okay,
I mean, there are
so
complaints.
you do track and make
Yeah.
public the number of complaints.
yes, so there are a number of ways that we receive complaints. We have a public complaint form on our website, so any member of the public or anyone can go onto our website and fill out our complaint form.
Okay.
That's one way. We also, have field agents that are out in the field doing inspections, interacting with licensees. Many of our complaints come in that way. Like I mentioned at the outset, many of the complaints come from other licensees. So that may be another way that we receive complaints. We get phone calls. we get emails, all sorts of ways that complaints come in. And yes, we are tracking them. And it's a part of our phase 2 IT project that we will have a system for public complaint portal that will easily be able to provide reports about how many complaints we're getting.
Great,
Okay.
terrific. So thank you for this work. If the committee is okay with this solution, I think we've answered Tanya's concern. I would incorporate it into our amendment. And I would ask Michelle to incorporate it into our amendment. And I would thank Tucker and Tanya very much for working on this and coming to resolution. I do think if this ongoing, I would, given that in the afternoon, I wear the OPR hat in Senate government operations, I'd be happy to see if we can work to clean up the rest of the language that we already have in under your umbrella over there at the Secretary of State's office that we already have to address. So I'm happy to help move that forward if it would be helpful in some capacity. But I think for the moment, I think we have a resolution on this, and I encourage us to incorporate it into our amendment.
Just, I don't understand that. I didn't get an answer to the question about could you do settlements that would not be public record? And I can talk to you after if you want.
I would say not pursuant to this language. If the board decides to take an administrative action, take disciplinary action, then that the ultimate record of that disciplinary action would need to be public.
Okay. Okay.
Any action has.
Right. Well, that's
All right,
just,
but if what are you cover is there's a settlement and there's a non-disclosure clause. So you
So the
reach.
board wouldn't engage in doing a non-disclosure
Okay.
agreement with a licensee, given.
okay.
I think this language would preclude that because the intent of the legislature is that if there is some type of disciplinary action taken, that it's to be, disclosed, and that's your intent. And so for them to engage in something.
Great.
I mean.
So it's,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That was my question. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Terrific.
That's helpful.
No, this is good teamwork. Thank you, because that's in our short time, we rely on teamwork that's happening behind the scenes. I think given in the 7 minutes we have left, so we're going to incorporate this into our amendment. I think we'd like to hear from Bryn, at least from Bryn. I think the amendment is looking good. I think this committee still has ongoing questions. This is an opportunity to ask Bryn how the CCB board feels about the amendment that we had presented by Michelle yesterday, and how, and particularly on the agriculture, I think the most number of questions, and correct me if I'm wrong, they will. I think the most number of questions came from the agriculture amendments. And however, I think my understanding is that the CCV board is supportive of those that you testified in ag. And if you would just be kind enough to fill us in on why you support them and why you think why you support them and encourage us to include them.
Certainly. So the board, I testified in Senate Agriculture about that amendment that the CCB did not have an objection to the language that's included in their amendment. It was one of the board's objectives with this bill was to correct a problem that we see occurring with municipalities. That there are some municipalities that are regulating the cannabis establishments that are opening within their borders in a manner that is either having the effect of prohibiting their operation or will ultimately have the effect of prohibiting their operation. One example that I believe Michelle testified about was a municipality that is proposing rules that would require that there be no odor at the boundary line of the property.
Yeah.
Which if that rule became the official rule of the town and the licensee would have to abide by it, they would not be able to operate there. So the addition of that language in section 5 really adds that, I think, some clarifying language about the original provision that required that municipalities not prohibit the operation of a cannabis establishment within their borders, and clarified that language to to essentially say what it means. You cannot prohibit the operation and you can't regulate in a manner that will effectively prohibit the operation of the campus establishment. Extending that farming benefits is not something that the board advocated for. However, we are in support of that language for purposes of current use and Act 250. It's our testimony that it's likely to have a pretty, I just want to remind everybody about the size of these operations.
Right.
So the largest outdoor canopy size that that licensees are eligible to get is 20,000 square feet, which is about a half acre.
We're now really clear on that, I think. All of us now know that an acre is now 40 pounds,
a little over 40,000.
4,356, right?
We can go to what a hectare is too.
Yes, we,
I used to.
4,356. Right, so
So-
20,000 square feet is about half an acre.
Yes, and that is the largest size of outdoor license that an applicant can get. I was in Ledge Council, O'Grady and I were speaking this morning about the amount of outdoor grow space that we have licensed right now. So right now we have approximately just under 50,000 square feet of licensed outdoor grow space. And of that, about 150,000 is exclusively small cultivators. So what we're looking at, like the new kind of universe of
If we added
land,
this, you mean?
if we added this, the new universe of land that would be eligible for these benefits is around 341,000 square feet, which is about 8 acres of land in the state of Vermont.
Can you give me that again? I'm sorry.
8 acres in the state.
Yeah, that's not pretty modest.
That's almost as much as we have for housing. That's good.
No, you're so bad.
So currently.
A few
small
zeros
cultivators
on
who Also, who avail themselves of these current benefits, how much are they covering?
I've been sitting.
About
next to $700.
154,000 square feet of outdoor grow space.
Oh,
So for
150,000 or 50,000, I think.
150,000 of our
Currently.
total outdoor licensed grow space right now, or actually as of I think last week, are small.
So they already
growers.
received those benefits.
Right.
Under what you passed last year.
Right.
And then so you would be then adding
Expanding that to approximately 8 more acres of land.
8 more.
Roughly. So it's
Of the farms were larger.
Yeah, and
So I'm just wondering if we should put any sort of language in here about, based on the requirements already, or just, if those requirements change and this stays the same, it will have a different impact.
but we aren't doing that yet, and this is, you're right, you're wanting to keep it this forever.
Well,
I wouldn't
no,
do that.
I want this to be flexible so that it doesn't have to be changed if we increase the size of what's
The
allowed.
largest
And
tier.
maybe that's very, very unlikely.
well, it's up to the legislature.
Right, you guys would have to do that.
We would have to
So
do
we would
that.
have to notice when,
You would
if
have
that
to
changes,
increase
we'll
the-
have to
yes.
notice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right,
We
well,
have to make the change.
So if
Right.
we increase the largest tier of outdoor cultivation, we would have to make that change. It would come through this committee and ag.
and we'd have to remember to do the
Yes.
agricultural part. All right.
So if you don't mind, there's two caveats that I'd like to just say,
Yeah.
which is the first is that the actual largest tier of outdoor grow space by statute is just under an acre, it's 37,500 or something. But the board has not opened that tier up. So it is not available. People cannot apply for that that tier of,
Oh, so the largest tier in statute is not yet one you've actually licensed.
we have not licensed anyone under that.
And what is that again?
That is a tier 6 outdoor, and it's 37,500 square feet. I believe it was designed to be just under an acre of gross space. So that's one caveat.
Okay, that's helpful.
So it's not yet, you have yet to license anyone under
No,
this.
and no,
Is there a reason?
because the legislature directed the board to prioritize small cultivators.
Okay, right.
And we heard quite a bit of public input during our rulemaking process that small cultivators wanted the ability to, have some market share in this new industry. And so the decision was made to not even open the largest tier of either our indoor or outdoor.
Okay. So we haven't crossed that bridge. What's your second
So the
caveat?
second caveat is just that 8 acre number I gave you, that is the amount of grow space. So the actual farms that these cannabis grows are on could obviously be larger than.
Right, but they're growing other things. one
Yes.
assumes.
Oh, I see.
This, quite frankly, this is an opportunity for our farms to conceivably have a small space, but big impact on their revenues conceivably, and help our farms diversify and sustain themselves in some capacities, different capacities. So, so those are your two caveats?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Then just,
One last question.
well, just the other issue was the municipalities. Seeing if it's possible to put the revenue share back in. And if we wanted to take any testimony from them.
I think that's an issue we should address and do a bill that finance could address next year, because I think it was an issue. It's an issue from the original bill that many of us supported, and that we thought would encourage more towns to actually say yes.
Right.
And I think it's so much a housekeeping bill. This I feel comfortable with doing because it's a piece of the housekeeping bill as it is now, and but I think that is a big policy decision. I mean, that's a bigger issue, and I think you would probably appreciate at this point in the game having that come in as a separate bill for next year, and maybe with whatever cannabis work is going on for next year.
It never went through finance that I remember. Now, Randy does.
Maybe it was removed.
I think it was.
Remember, it was Jeanette's passion.
Jeanette fought
She
for it.
fought so
But I
hard for it.
think the board has been up and running for over a year, 2 years, and it's just starting to make revenue. And I don't know if we ended up with you paying back what we paid in, but it's been being subsidized. And to start raking off any amount of that revenue until we found out what
I
it
think this is
was.
next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's let it mature enough for 18
We need
months
to let
at
this
least.
plant grow a little bit before
Okay.
we prune it. Eventually we'll prune it.
All right.
But I think it's an issue that we should address once this market has matured a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to take this up again tomorrow. And
For tomorrow, so I will incorporate Tucker's language. I'll take out all the highlighting. Is there anything else you'd like me to do in preparation for tomorrow at 9?
committee,
No.
I think we're probably good.
And then I saw, totally up to you, but I saw that Stuart was on for tomorrow.
Yes.
I mean, I don't.
We were not
Right, I
able.
know, but I was just gonna say, I think they're all good.
I
with
think
the
they are.
language That's in health and welfare or whatever, so I just don't, I know you guys are.
I am
trying to watch
anticipating
time, so.
a yesable moment. The one issue, which is advertising, which I know the retailers are bringing up.
Well, my local newspaper has brought up advertising.
So I think that is,
They just think it's too strict and.
They think it's
They're
too strict.
losing thousands of dollars, which could keep them afloat.
Right. So we're gonna hear that the retail, but I think, anyway, I'm not gonna anticipate Colleen's.
I know I've seen ads from New Hampshire for alcohol,
Right.
which is infuriating.
So
Come to New
I think
Hampshire,
with
why
that,
don't
we will reconvene here at 9